Everyone's got a lot going on, but when you're talking to someone, you got to be present. It doesn't have to all be work. Ask them how they're doing, get to know them a little bit. And again, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're, the client who pays our bills, a chief engineer, a janitorial cleaner, the mail person, treat everybody with respect.
This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Welcome back to Facility Rockstars. I'm your host, Jay Culbert, and I can't wait to get into discussion with today's guest. He is a facility management expert, senior director, and industry thought leader. He is someone who believes that excellence in facility management is driven by visionary leadership and dedication to redefining industry standards. His passion lies in transforming operational capabilities through innovative solutions and fostering environments where efficiency, safety, and strategic growth are paramount. He is also an expert in program and project management, customer service, and facility condition assessments. Throughout his career, he has earned several notable achievements, including being awarded the Chief Executive Award in 2019, a testament to his commitment to excellence and innovation. He currently serves as the Vice President, Facility Management Services at UG2 and is the Vice President of Education for IFMA Boston. Matt Deehan, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. That's a pretty good introduction. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Hey, that introduction is all you, my friend. Thanks for investing the time. Truly appreciate it, man.
No, appreciate the invite. It's going to be fun. Let's roll.
Of course. Yeah, we are going to have a lot of fun today. So my first question is going to be this, right? You have a lot of diverse background in your history here. And what has been your biggest lesson learned from all of your experiences?
My biggest lessons learned. I've been at it for about 25 years now. A lot of clients, a lot of companies, a lot of employers. But I had to boil it. Yeah, I knew this one was probably coming. So I wanted to boil it down to, it's called trust but verify, right? Trust but verify. And I know it's a simple term. It's cliche, but it's really, really true. You can use that kind of methodology in so many different ways. Because just information, when you're receiving information, whether it's about your building or buildings, in meetings, when we're sitting through meetings or by phone or by verbal, believe it or not, there's a lot of folks out there that kind of gloss over, and they just don't dig into the details. That's what I found anyway, my experience. That's what I found. I try to this day, pay attention to the details, dig into the details, because that's where the proof is anyway. So trust people at the surface for trust their word for what it's worth. But always trust but verify. You need to come up with some sort of proof. You got to dig into it a second or third layer down to make sure it's right. Because believe it or not, a lot of people don't. So that's, if I had to come down to it, yeah, trust but verify everything in your every daily lives.
It sounds like a good feedback loop too. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but yeah.
No, it is. Right. It is. I keep saying the word proof. When you could be in a construction meeting, you can be in a facilities meeting or a project meeting, or you could be just trading emails back and forth with somebody, and it's fairly important for whatever the topic matter that you're talking about. And you want to take people for their word, but more often you can't though. I'll just say it, you can't. You can trust people for their word, but then you ask for verification, some sort of proof, and that just makes your project, your task, whatever end goal you're going for, that much more accurate. Because you can probably agree, if you take someone's word from somebody who really doesn't know what they're talking about, but they'll talk in circles and to try to get you to feel like they know what they're talking about. And if you take them for their word and you go off in a direction and all kinds of resources, the team's heading the wrong direction for days and weeks on end, it's a lot of wasted time. So it very easily spirals out of control. So I always try to bring it back to that trust but verify kind of terminology.
Have you found that some have appreciated that you do that because they say they missed something, and are they grateful that you actually caught it? They didn't intend wrongdoing, right?
Yeah, I would say yes. I would say not everybody. I'll put it that way. I would say not everybody, because I'm sure you get it, Jay. I would say most facility managers, facility engineers, anybody technical, it shouldn't have to be that. Just somebody who kind of, gets into the details for whatever services you're delivering in our, wide spectrum industry. They get it. Okay. Matt's believing what I'm saying here, but I got to produce the pudding. I got to show them, here's the product, here's the end, here's the output. So again, I would say not everybody, and the folks that, and they might say, hey, how come you're not taking my word for it? My answer, and I've been asked that question many times. My answer is, well, I've been burned many times before, and I want to prevent against that, lessons learned type of thing. So that would be my response to that.
Outstanding. Oh, you know what? Let me ask you then. Is there an example you could think of where you actually did do that investigative approach and you caught something, you saw something, and what was the outcome?
Well, I've been involved in both, put it that way. And I'm not going to, trying to go back in my memory banks, been involved in both. The reason why I live like that now, to kind of do the extra homework to make sure you're accurate, make sure you're right before you spend too many days, calendar days or people resources, because I have been burned early in my career. You take somebody's word for it. Yeah, this is good. It's 100% accurate. Run with it, Matt. And it's just, I'm saying, I'm using myself as an example, but it could be a whole project team, whatever resources you have at the table. Run with it, and everyone's spending company resources, manual resources, financial resources, and you're spending it in the wrong direction. And like I said, I've been burned. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that can kind of assimilate. You could lose a lot of time going to and rework. It ends up in rework anyway. So not so much where it works, Jay. You asked me where has it worked well. My mind goes to where it didn't work. And that's just more reason for taking that approach,
Got it. Great stuff. I think it's a fantastic lesson learned, one we can all learn from. So I'm going to call you a resident expert in outsourced facility services, right?
Okay.
Yep. Those solutions to facilities. So could you just expand upon that a bit? Because you speak from a place of a lot of experience.
Yeah. So every building owner. So we're in people call it the built environment, facilities management industry, facility services industry. It's kind of all interchangeable, but there's owners out there. There's buildings out there. There's owners of the buildings, and they need to make a decision. Do they want to run, whatever the culture is in their own organization? Do they run the building? Do they not just own the building? Do they manage the day-to-day operations of the building themselves? We call it in-house. Or do they outsource it to a third party? We like to say partner, which is what I've done most of my career, being a third party partner to manage on behalf of the owner. Some outfits, some organizations, they like to own the building or camp. It could be a corporate campus, it could be standalone building, it could be a college campus, what we call it, the built environment. They might like to own it. They might want to manage it, but then they don't, but that's it. That's kind of where they stop. So when you get into kind of the ancillary services, whether it be operations and maintenance, mailroom services, load and dock, janitorial services, groundskeeping, whatever it may be. That's kind of where they kind of take a step back and they want to outsource. Traditionally they outsource those services, but there's some folks that just want to own it and want nothing else to do with it. So just their culture, their kind of philosophy. So it could be as much as we call it full facility management, outsourcing the whole function. Or they could, pick and choose which services to outsource and what components to keep in-house. So been involved in all of it, give and take, whatever the owner wants.
Sure. Well, so what do you think some of the benefits of outsourcing, say everything versus piecemeal, and maybe some of the challenges that owners have with this process too?
Yeah. So I'll put a little bit of my sales hat. So I'm kind of a hybrid, salesperson, what's the positives that come out of outsourcing. But also, I'm an operator at heart. So I, trying to make a case for in-house as well. But so outsourcing, you have, as soon as you outsource, like we could call it one service line, one component of your facility's responsibilities, or 2 or 3 or 4, however it may be. As long as you outsource, or when you outsource, I would say the most important thing is access to expertise. Because a lot of, the company that I work for or companies I've worked for in the past, they have a lot of smart people. And there's a lot of smart people in this. If a building owner or building manager out there outsources a component of their responsibilities, that automatically unlocks access to all these really, really smart people. They're not on your site every day. They're not in your building every day, but they're available, back in the regional office or the corporate office, but they can get involved because, we're partners, we're on a contract.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just going to say, I was going to say, it's one of the reasons why I really loved being being an outsourced partner, because of the variety. You learn so much. You learn so much. I mean, I know a lot of facility managers across the country. I've been involved in a lot of different facilities departments, got exposed to it and how they operate, and they become experts at their building or buildings,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to, but that's it. They become that's it. And then, years could go by, and I was in that position, 3, 4, 5 years. And I kind of knew, like, all right, now on to the next thing. Right. So my point is, I've learned a lot personally. I've learned a lot being exposed to a lot of different clients, a lot of different facilities, type of operations, a lot of different geographies. So, I've had the opportunity to just learn from some really good people out there over the years. So,
Yeah, I think so. What you said, I heard you say access to expertise. So true, right? Because you're outsourcing, and here's the other distinction I heard you just make. Like, and these are my words. You didn't say that this way, but you might have decades of experience in a building or on a campus, but you'd have
right.
potentially hundreds of years of experience when you outsource to a company like yourself or anybody else, right? That does this, and they're the experts in the field.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. No, I mean, I was just a couple weeks ago, I was in, one of our chief engineers does a really good job, runs a client of ours down in Washington, D.C., does a really good job, has that place locked down, but, they needed some help with their CMMS and some capital planning, you know, doing, rounds and readings of all their mechanical spaces, some critical equipment. So, just a simple email, phone call. Hey, Matt, can you come down and visit? We want to spend some time and talk to the client, talk to the chief, and just get your 2 cents. It's just getting a fresh set of eyes. And everyone knows, all right, if you're an analyst, we're these facility people, right? We are very analytical, but it's kind of a peer-to-peer review. You get, I don't want to say complacent, but a good management tactic is to have a fresh set of eyes every now and then, and help solve problems. That's all. Help solve problems. So that's a lot of my job, is to do that. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Well said. Well said. And you're good at it. Can we talk about continuous improvement? Like you just touched on, like,
Yeah.
sharing best practices.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about goal of perfection, that whole topic there. So maybe
That,
dig
that's the
in,
goal. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I would say, there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack there, but you're never going to be perfect. Not in this business anyway. Never going to be perfect. Stuff's going to happen. But when I say the goal, it should always be the goal. If there's a right way to do something, you should plan to do it that way until whatever outside factors says you can't, right? And financial or otherwise, but it should always be the goal. Very high bar. The goal should be perfection. If you shoot for something subpar or, status quo, then that's it. Just, some people do it and it's great. It just doesn't compute in my head. It's not the way I'm wired.
Right.
So, and it's when you think everything's, it's a mentality, it's a thought process that you mentioned, continuous improvement. Things could be going well, whether at your building, at your campus, day-to-day operations, everything's getting done. All the metrics are up, green arrows and all that, but it's okay. What's next? How can I do this better? And there may not be a better, but it's the thought process, continuously looking at your operation. How can we improve upon? Don't get complacent, I guess I'm trying to say. It's a thought process, a mentality.
That's fantastic. I was saying, facility management is so multifaceted. I was with a facility manager earlier today, right? And I said, "How's your day going?" He says, "It's going great, but we planned for A, B, C, D, and E, and then G hit us from the left door. Like we weren't ready for G." So yeah,
It's funny you say that. Good morning. How's your day going so far? And 25 minutes later, you might be at the end of that conversation.
So have you found any best practices with implementing continuous improvement? And you kind of touched on it, but what do you find really works?
So go back to that access. We're talking about access to expertise. As a facility manager, I think a lot of us will agree we're jack of all trades, but we're the master of none. But we're smart enough to know when we're not smart enough. And, okay, if you got a problem in your building and say, okay, I need to go get a mechanical engineer to help me out on this, or I need to go get in contact with an architect. I need an industrial hygienist for this EHS issue. We're again, jack of all trades, master of none, but we know when we need to pull in the expertise. Because you mentioned best practices. If you have that mentality, you pull in the variable experts that you need as needed. And we're all getting a little bit older. At least I am anyway. You accumulate all that knowledge over time. If you just kind of have that thought process and bring in the expertise when you need it, you learn and you learn and you learn and you learn. So, I mean, that's how I live. And I feel, a lot of the FMs out there do something very similar. So that's how you share it too. Like I could be talking to, that's why I like, talking to people like yourself or the IFMA chapter, national and local here in Boston. You just share best practices with third-party vendors, people on your campus, this podcast, any way you can to share best practices, war stories, shop stories, things like that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You touched on learning, Matt, and IFMA, so I actually want to jump there. We're going to do that a little bit later, but there are no rules here.
I did that on purpose. I did that on purpose.
There you go. Nice segue. All right, so Vice President of Education for IFMA, like we've thankfully had a lot of IFMA people here on the show, and now we have you as well. So what an amazing organization! Like, it's so happy to talk about IFMA as just they contribute so much to our world, right? But what does the role of education at IFMA look like for you?
Yeah, so I'm just learning. I probably took the role on probably last fall, somewhere around last fall. Andrew Delpreet, our IFMA Boston chapter president, asked me to join the board. So didn't really know a whole lot what it was going to entail, but it's been pretty good so far, so good. What it entails is, so we have the chapter is organized in various committees. So I oversee a couple of components of the chapter. One is what I think is one of the best and biggest. It's called the Think Tank Committee. A lot of smart FMs are part of that committee, and what their mission is to do is to come up with educational topics that the membership would like to learn about. And I talk about membership, I'm talking the entire chapter membership for Greater Boston. So we meet twice a month, come up with topics, but then we try to do 1 or 2 educational topics. We deploy and deliver educational content about twice a month. So once we come up with, we're in that stage right now, trying to plan for the call it the academic calendar year. We take the summer off, we start up again in September, and it runs right till June, the following year. So we're kind of in that mode right now, planning for the fall educational session. So once you select the topics you want to learn about, or you think the membership might want to learn about, could be anything related. Then the logistics comes into play. Let's get a subject matter expert to kind of deliver the content. Is it in-person, face-to-face seminar? Is it a webinar, at noontime, lunchtime webinar with an SME? Can we do it in-house with one of our members? IFMA members, because they are the SME, they can deliver the information, or do we pull in a partner? And all those logistics come into play. If it's in person, let's get some space, right? We got to try to get some space, usually some refreshments, food services, things like that nature. And again, we even go as far as let's rotate between north of Boston, Metro West, south of Boston, things like that, because we got membership all over the place. Anyway, so that's kind of a little bit of where the Think Tank Committee works, how it works. We also do
I love the Think Tank Committee, not to interrupt you, but that's awesome.
If you want to be a member, let me know. We'll get you on board.
Will. Yeah, definitely.
But in the whole education thing and learning, I guess I'm a glutton for punishment. I not so much anymore, but when I was younger, I probably took every year, maybe every other year, I took it up like a personal goal of mine to get some credentials, whether through IFMA or LEAD or Cornet. So I've accumulated some credentials just because I just wanted to learn. I wanted to learn and learn and learn, and you get some letters after your name if you do the work. So it seems the whole education piece of the IFMA chapter kind of works with me. And there's also components about white paper. You talk about the VP of Education, what they're responsible for. We try to pull together once or twice a year. We do a white paper, just another content driven kind of output for the chapter people can learn from.
At the end of the show, we'll talk about all the connectivity and how we get to these places and people you're talking about. But where do you get that white paper? I'm curious. Once it's developed.
Well, I'm new. Okay, I'll be honest. I'm new to the role. I've seen them. I've read them from my predecessor. But what I'm thinking going forward, next couple of weeks, I'm going to be planning out our next white paper topic. But I mentioned all these, 1 or 2 educational topics per month. So we do quite a bit of those. So I'm actually going to all right, I'm going to nerd out for a little bit. We're going to look at the
Do it.
data. We're going to look at the data for the past 12 months. So, my predecessor before I joined the board and whatnot. And out of all the topics that were delivered, we can get, if you're a member, I'm a member, you register for the event, well, again, virtual or in person. I just want to look at the registration information, who registered for this, for what topics. And if I see something kind of skews off the board, like, wow, that was a hot topic. A lot of people showed up for that. A lot of people registered for that one. A lot of people showed up for attendance for that one. It's worth spending a little bit more time in the form of a white paper. That's the way I'm thinking anyway. Right now, haven't done it yet, so I can't really answer that question, but that's kind of what we're forecasting for.
I love that though. You look at the trends and what happened in the past, and
Well, you might have a dud, right?
Sure.
Not everyone's gonna be. You might have a dud. No one shows up, or really, whoever the presenter one really wasn't that good for some reason, and I'm not gonna recycle that one.
Right.
So,
oh, that's awesome. Thanks for expanding on it, man. Maybe more like administrative, but like administrative controls,
yeah,
automation, CMMS, and not a lot of people talk about Smartsheet, but I know you've mentioned it.
yeah.
Let's go through all that a little bit because it's very relevant to our listeners and our whole world, really.
So I'm a facility engineer, by trade, educated. So just the whole concept of controls. Something in our world, something goes wrong. If I'm a facility engineer or a janitorial supervisor, or I run the loading dock at the site level, something goes wrong, right? With facilities, things go wrong. You naturally want to put controls in place so it doesn't happen again. So it's again, it's a train of thought, it's a mindset. How can I prevent this from happening again? And I try to take it one step further, take out the human element, right? So I talk about automation. How can I automate this control so it'll work without human intervention? Because, I always use the example, the chief engineer has been in the same building for 20 years. He can run that building like a top. He knows where every dead body is and nook and cranny. But once that person retires and moves on, nobody knows nothing, because nobody wrote anything down with no controls in place. So, no, and so just controls, the whole concept of controls, and it could be administrative controls. A lot of times it is. So just a couple examples, at least there's probably more, but what I've been exposed to, I really heavily rely upon CMMS. When you want to install something for yourself, your current facilities team, or the facilities team of the same building 10 years down the road. I was lucky enough to open up the Novartis Biomedical Research Lab in Cambridge in 2004. I was in a construction trailer and outside the old Necco factory was it 250 Mass Ave. It was torn down to the concrete studs. So I was there for the whole construction piece, brought it online, commissioning, and there was zero SOPs. So probably sort of a good 4.5 years, building out the preventive maintenance program in the CMMS. And if you learn something went wrong, I'm like, oh, I got to make sure that doesn't happen again. We would program that into the CMMS. But again, the mindset was, I'm going to take care of this for me because I'm here right now. I'm in charge. But I was in Cambridge this morning. I drove right by it. So I'm hoping the whole PM database that I did in 2004, or started, I should say, it's still there. So it's controls, whether you're there or not. You take out that human element. And it could be in form of an SOP training. I like the automation. CMMS. You mentioned Smartsheet. I do love Smartsheet. So if anyone hasn't touched it out there, I totally recommend getting familiar with it. It's a project management tool, but it comes with heavy automation. And just try to remove the human element so you can remove challenges and obstacles. And so things go wrong, you want to prevent it. So kind of minimize your liability going forward. So again, it's another mindset.
Hey, rock stars, if you're tuning into the podcast and are feeling overwhelmed by all the maintenance demands at your facility, don't stress. We've got you covered. Our sponsor, Colutus, is your go-to partner to help you tackle all those demands and get them done right, on time, and with top-notch quality. From project planning to execution, Colutus is there to make hard work easy. Visit colutus.com today to get started. No, I love where you're going with this because, like, you look at a building you built or helped to build and started in 2004. You drove by today, and like you said, like it's not you started it, but it's not about you. It's about the success of the program and the building and the systems, and it's automated beyond that, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
we have experience with Smartsheet here at our company too.
Oh, do you?
I agree. Yeah, cool. It's a good platform. We use we're learning how to use it more effectively. But we have a guy who's really good with it. So, yeah, I agree. Are there any other CMMS platforms that you'd recommend or say, hey, like a really good experience with this one?
Depends on who's listening to the podcast. I don't want to badmouth anybody, but so my current job, my current position, really like there's a couple. I shouldn't say there's a couple. What I'll say is you have, CMMS, computerized maintenance management system, and they do really well at asset management. There's others out there that do really well at vendor dispatch. So you could go from in a facilities operation where you have a building or a campus of buildings and you have your asset management component. CMMS does really well. On the other side of the spectrum, I've been part of teams that, or clients, I should say, that have, over 1,000 locations in 27 different states, and you need to control it with your CMMS. And you're basically, we call it swivel chair almost, but you get a work request from a location somewhere in Nebraska, and you need to get an electrician. And so you need that vendor management, vendor dispatch capabilities. So my point is, I'm going to run some CMMS are really good at that vendor management dispatch. Some are really good at asset management, site level operations, we'll put it. I really haven't found the holy grail that does both really well. Put it that way. And then you can get into the integrated work management system, which does some of your real estate function really well, like lease administration and insurance tracking and things like that. A little bit of reactive work order, or some people call it tenant requests. I call it unscheduled requests. Not IWMS does that really well. But then you say, okay, let me build it out. Let me build up my preventive maintenance program, my asset management program. Doesn't do that well. So different. It depends on what you're going for, what your priority is as far as selection go. There's no, in my experience, there is no holy grail. Not yet anyway. Haven't seen it.
Great information. Really good information. So I guess for the benefit of the audience listening, now obviously it's hugely educational, so thank you. And what's been like a biggest challenge you've faced, you and your team, and how did you work through it? Best practices to avoid it in the future. How does that tie in with what we're talking about here?
Yeah, so I thought about this one, and what we do for a living. We have a whole bunch of challenges, but the biggest one, if I had to pick one, the biggest one was, and I'll set the stage. There was grocery stores. Client had a bunch of grocery stores, and 792 of them to be exact. They've gone from Maine down to South. At the time, it was from Maine down to probably Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania area. It was a new program. It was a lot of locations, a lot of states involved. It was all East Coast, but we were the client had asked us to move to a route maintenance program, meaning there's, general maintenance mechanics in a van with tools and parts and components and ladders. And they would respond we implemented a CMMS, to do the dispatch and the controlling the workflow. So we had to design geographically, how many, we're talking about grocery stores, right? How many grocery stores a general maintenance technician could handle. And again, these technicians were not part of an operation, a team. They need to be hired. So I guess the tough part was, again, we're the service provider. We're the outsourced service provider. So we had to hire, I want to say, I don't know, 20, 22, low 20 something route maintenance technicians from Maine down to, Pennsylvania, Maryland. It was New York, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Mass, things like Massachusetts, things like that. And we're trying to, we had 6 months to plan, 6 months to hire, acquire vehicles, hire technicians, multiple states. So it's all the normal things. You have to, evaluate resumes, interview people. And my point is, couldn't do it myself. I engaged a large amount of resources in different states, and we kind of did it all. The goal was to launch all the technicians and trucks and tools and the CMMS and service a 792 stores all in the same day. Well, no, launch all in the same day. So I guess my point is, that was probably the biggest undertaking I've ever been a part of, and could not have done it myself. Employed a lot of people, and we needed to use a lot of project management tactics and methodologies to control that, because it, could have got out of hand really quickly. and we got it off the ground. So pretty proud of that. Anyway, that was probably my biggest challenge. My point is collaboration with other people.
Yeah.
Collaborate. I don't care if it's in your job description or not, but as long as you surround yourself with people that can collaborate and work together for a common goal, and they all work hard, you can get a lot of good stuff done. You really can.
Awesome. That's a huge undertaking. Congratulations.
That was a while ago. Yeah, I don't know. That was 2012, somewhere around there, 2013. Got to go back on the memory bank. So
even so, though, no matter when, like huge task. So actually, now let me compound that a little bit. Say 2-3 months into the program after a big successful launch, like what were some of those ahas? Like, oh, good thing we thought of this, or we didn't think of that.
Process improvement, right? We looked at it. Something comes to mind, process improvement. And it was the function of buying materials and parts. So I could be a maintenance technician driving around in a van somewhere in the middle of Pennsylvania. I got my 10, 12 stores that I'm responsible for. We were trying to streamline it. So, if you were a technician in a truck, you didn't have to, you have a company credit card, you go hit the Home Depot or Grainger or whatever, and you have to pick out what you need for the store, buy it, purchase it, put it in the truck and bring it. We were trying to eliminate all that. So we're trying to streamline, and we actually did, I think. We did. We tried to streamline, not everything, but the typical things you would buy for materials within a typical grocery store, and have that. Was it Grainger at the time? It might have been Grainger or a competitor. I can't remember, but it was a Grainger like, and they would have it all stocked up at their branches. And we tried to make it all that stock, that inventory, pre-planned inventory, I guess, of things you could use a lot. Now, again, it wouldn't be everything, but if you get it, 60, 70, 80%, it'd be great. Right. And we'd have it shipped to their house. They would be able to purchase it via the CMMS, pick it off a drop-down list, purchase order, the whole deal. And instead of wasting all that windshield time to go back and forth from a supplier or a vendor, pick what they need, how many they need. And because you're in the CMS and knows what store it's going to. So you talk about cost centers and all that charge back and what store it gets allocated to. And it would get shipped to the technician's home address. Again, these are route maintenance people. There's no like office or hub or anything like that they're working remote. So they would ship to their house, stock up their van for the next day. And anyway, that's a small piece of just process improvement, less windshield time, more wrench time, as they call it, more time taking care of the client, in this case, the stores. So that's one thing that comes to mind.
I love the streamlining, and not to mention the hard and soft costs associated with not doing that, right? Like the savings must have been tremendous.
Well, it was probably the soft. I mean, you still spent the money on the parts. You got more work done and more efficient, put it that way. And I would say more efficient. And it's not always possible, but you try. That perfection goal is always up. That you try. That's where the goal's got to lie, and hopefully you're successful more often than not.
In our world, we'll call it, say it's one of our epoxy floor installers, right? Call it the $100 hardener kit for the epoxy that we didn't have because the time to go get it, the gas you used to get it, the toll you paid on the way, whatever it might be.
It seems like a small thing, but when you add it all up, it's like, all right, we can streamline this. Instead of having 12 steps in the process, let's streamline it down to 7 or 8.
So let's move on to stakeholder relationships. Let's talk about that a little bit. I know you've touched on it, but how does it what's the impact here? How do you build them and how do you sustain them?
Say first, for me, it all revolves around the word communication. I try to take pride in communication because it's I don't know why, and you can probably agree, a lot of people suck at communication. They suck at it. They don't close the loop. They don't talk to the right people. And I just try to I try to make sure I consider myself an over communicator. I want a lot of people to know what's going on because I never know. A lot of people know what's going on, whether it's your project, one transactional thing or something larger project, whatever it may be. You never know when something's going to fall through the cracks. And I guess you have a less possibility something's going to fall through the cracks if people know about it. That's all. And, it doesn't hurt. A lot of times it doesn't hurt if people know about it. It's kind of like, you ask about people, right? So the one thing I want to bring up about communication is people. Everyone's got a lot going on, but when you're talking to someone, one person, two people, one or, whatever it may be, one-on-one or just a small few, you got to be present All right. And you don't, it doesn't have to all be work. You can, obviously you're there because of work, whatever the goal is business wise, but, ask them how they're doing, get to know them a little bit. And again, I do this with, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're, the client who pays our bills, a chief engineer, a janitorial cleaner, the mail person, your doctor, the mailman, whoever walks by you and you interact with in your everyday lives, just treat them with respect. Um, in a professional setting, treat everybody with respect, get to know them, build a relationship. It's going to sound self-centered, but build a relationship with the stakeholders before you need them. Because again, we talked earlier about collaboration, get things done. We can't get things done by ourselves. We can't. We talk about those cross-functional teams. I'm like, oh, I need human resources. I need finance. I need the legal department. I need health and safety to get something that's on my plate. I need all these people and components of these functions to get something done. But before you actually need to ask somebody who doesn't report to you, you got to ask somebody who doesn't report to you to get something done on your behalf. You got to have a relationship, a meaningful relationship before I was trying to beforehand, build the relationship beforehand, because you don't know when you have to work with that person to actually get something done. So yeah. And again, and likewise, I like people that I like dealing with. I will help them, I guess, more expediently, I guess, because I have a good relationship with them, and vice versa. That's what I expect from other people too. If I want to treat these people well, because I know I'm going to need them at some point to do something that's in my interest, or something that's on my plate. Could be vendors, could be clients, could be building owners. It could be anybody.
I love what you said, and you said it could sound self-centered, but I don't think so, because look, it all comes down to relationships and good communication. And people, in my view of the world, people want to help people, right? So when you have a good relationship, you're gonna help them, and they're gonna help you, because it has to be a good back and forth, right? It has to go both directions.
Yeah,
So no, I think it's great, Matt. That's awesome.
worked out
So
so far.
so we definitely want to learn about you, and we don't want to. You and I could probably talk forever here, but what advice would you give? You've given us a lot of education. What advice would you give, people with similar roles in this type of profession? What would you give them?
Probably a lot about what we already talked about. The
Yeah.
people thing, the relationship, the communication, that's huge. And again, I don't care who you are, if you're high up on the ladder, low, mid, whatever, what role you have, what industry you're in, right? But the people thing and the communication, the people relationship is huge. I would say, I keep going back to that trust but verified mindset we started the call off with,
Mhm.
the podcast, I should say. Advice, yeah, just relationships is huge. I think relationships trumps. I didn't want to bring that name into the conversation, but it trumps everything else.
Mhm.
When it's like, okay, you could say, okay, trying to make decisions financially based, economically based, geographically based. Well, you might have a policy or protocol to do X, Y, Z, but if there's a relationship that comes into it, it trumps everything else. So I mean, if I had to say one thing, I know it's kind of gray in general, but um, you probably agree, and a lot of people listening probably agree. You can find your next employer by creating relationships. You can keep your current employer by keeping good relationships and performing well. Um, if you're in a sales capacity, you can get new business with relationships. It all comes back to relationships. If you're at the building level and you're trying to get work done, your preventive maintenance work done, or replace the floor, or get a capital project executed, you need relationships with those vendors. Or in our world, there's a lot of emergencies. Pipe breaks, you got a flood, you got emergencies, power outages, whatever it may be, sinkhole. You got
Mhm.
to have those relationships with your partners, external partners, to rectify that emergency. So in a roundabout way, it all comes back to the relationships. End users, we service end users of our clients who sit in these offices or these buildings that we service. Relationships with them works out real, so they don't complain, keep them
Yeah,
happy. So, I mean, so in every different direction, it just comes back to relationships, this kind of hub and spoke world we live in, at least in the facilities world.
definitely. I appreciate you going into that too, because it was almost unfair of me to ask, because you really the trust but verify, and you've really given us the advice through this whole conversation, right? But thank you for that. And yeah,
No, no worries.
relationships. Um, I want to touch on IFMA again.
Okay.
because we've had Ray T-Burge on the show, we've had Andrew Del Preet, who you mentioned earlier, and now you. I'm very grateful that all you guys have come on the show. And how would you recommend people get involved with IFMA if they chose to?
Okay. So the answer is to get involved with IFMA. I would say we talked a lot about stakeholders. If you're in the facilities world, and facilities is a big giant umbrella, but if you work for a logistics company or move company or a mechanical company or janitorial company, or there's lots and lots, generator, there's lots, right? There's lots. It's a huge facilities umbrella. Should be a member of IFMA, International Facilities Management Association. It's helped me out a lot from a standpoint of networking, meeting people that do similar jobs to myself. You learn from them. You can teach them if they ask, if it's something you can bring to the table, but also selfishly, I can learn too from others, locally with the Boston chapter, but also nationally. I asked a question the other day, just real quick story. One of my clients asked me about, Matt, what do you know about installing a lithium battery UPS system? The client in New York City. I didn't know anything. So I did a lot. So I took the question though, and I posted it on the IFMA International Networking. I think it was called Engage or something like that. I've used it a couple times before where you ask a question, but any IFMA member who has eyeballs on that Engage, they call it the networking tool on IFMA.com, the national page, saw the question. And if it's an expert out there somewhere with their eyes on it, but you might get one or two, responses to it. And you'll learn. I learned from other people. I mean, you can Google or use AI, chatbot, Copilot, and get, the canned answers. But I was amazed. I got like 7 different responses without, this is how I've used it. So you get the experience of 7 different IFMA members I don't even met. And I was able to kind of bundle all that and kind of give a report back to our clients as here's what I found out. And they were very, very thankful. Go back to that access thing, right? They had no idea how, okay, I don't see Matt every day. He doesn't live in New York City. He doesn't run my campus, but because I outsourced, we have access to people like that. And I used IFMA access to a wider kind of swath of IFMA people that did know about lithium ion UPS systems. So, kind of cycled all that information back to the client at work. So that's just one instance of IFMA.
That's a powerful example, obviously. Like I just wrote it down, like Engage. That's the name of
That's what it's called. It's called Engage.
Okay.
Yeah. You can pose a question and people can respond. So it seems simple, but that's how, it's simple as me, like flooring. If I could pick up the phone and call you to learn about flooring. But if there's something else, I don't know about, just post it and see what kind of responses. And some people leave their name and phone number. So if you want to follow up at a little bit more detail, you can by phone or whatnot. But yeah, it's a great tool. I've used it a couple of times. It's been handy. The point is that's just one little kind of attribute from IFMA. But the networking is huge. Every year I try to go to the World Workplace Conference. Whenever real work doesn't get in the way, I can get away for a few days. Networking is huge. Meeting people across the country that do your job and just swapping, again, sharing best practices. It goes back to the same themes, sharing best practices and relationships. Could do that in the educational piece too. Whenever I go to these trade shows, a lot of people go to they go through the trade shows and visit the different booths. I don't really do that. I go for the seminars. I'm a glutton for punishment. I see a topic that I don't know about or I want to know about, I'll take the class, so I try to jam in as many educational seminars as I can in 2.5 days, so, again, not just locally here in our Boston chapter, but again, nationally when IFMA's got some national shows going on.
Love your thirst for knowledge.
You don't know what you don't know. And if I don't, I get kind of squirrely if you don't know something. So let's learn about it. But you asked about people get involved. IFMA.com is the international website, and locally here for the Boston chapter is ifmaboston.org. And you need to sign up you need to register as a member with the international website, which is truly international. But then I think when you go through the registration process with ifma.com, that internationally, they select, what your local chapter is and the checkbox somewhere, and you become a member of the Boston chapter. So, and then you get involved, and that's the thing, get involved. You get, you get everything, IFMA Boston and IFMA International will push things out to you, but just get involved. You don't have to be on a committee, but go to some of these pop-up events, learn people. And after a while you get hooked. It's really cool.
Awesome. What a great run through. And yeah, Ray and Andrew both mentioned the pop-up events, and that was a great way to just get introduced quickly. And appreciate the information about the website. So we'll have to wrap, but before we do, I free time. I mean, Matt, what do you do when you're not educating with IFMA and going to seminars and doing what you do every day?
Well, let's see here. Yesterday, so I got 3 kids, one's out of the house in the working world, but I still got 2. And my daughter's a sophomore in high school. She plays softball. My youngest is 14. He plays baseball. So I'm usually on a softball or baseball field as soon as the business hours are over, almost every day. And I'm wrapping up my coaching career. Actually, I coached my daughter for about 9 years growing up in softball. There were some nights where I had a baseball game to coach and a softball game to coach on the same night, and I was kind of going. It was crazy. It is crazy. So to answer your question, there was no time. That's kind of dwindling. It's dwindling. I got just my son's baseball team right now, but that's usually where I am. Saturdays, Sundays, evenings during the week. Yeah, I'm on a ball field somewhere.
Very engaged dad. Good for you, man.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
1,000 miles an hour.
How I'm sure people are going to have questions for you beyond what we discussed and what they learned during this show. So how would you recommend people get in touch with you?
I would say the easiest way, probably LinkedIn. Yeah, I have a LinkedIn profile. I got my personal email, the professional email, my phone number is all on there. So yeah, I'd be happy to.
Matt, I can't thank you enough for investing the time. It's been awesome talking with you today.
Good. I hope it overworked out,
Oh, absolutely. And I know we're due for a lunch pretty soon too, so I'll make sure we make that happen.
Okay, I'm cool with that. We can do that. Make it happen.
Thanks, man. And for everyone listening, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Matt was super educational today. So if you learned something, tell someone about the show, subscribe to the podcast on your favorite channel.
What is it?
And Facility Rockstars, man. There you go, right there.
There you go.
You got it.
Right, cool.
Until next time, everybody have a great week, and we'll see you next week. It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.